All right. So let's jump into how to ensure a successful project. Quick introduction about me, Tracy McMullen with interRel Consulting. I just celebrated my 15-year anniversary with interRel, and I've been doing this, gosh, for a really long time. I am a proud wife and mom. We already kind of laughed about this, wife and proud mom, in our previous session, because I got to speak with Tony in the last session, but have 2 teenage kids that are amazing and fun. I am a CrossFitter. You're going to see Tony likes to run. I like to run until my knees. I ran so much that my knees now don't really like me running. So I switched to CrossFit, although I'm not a crazy CrossFitter, but I do recommend it to everyone. And then I also am a reader. I read a ton of books whenever I can, but I only read non-thinking books. If it's definitely beach reads for me because my brain is pretty tired once I get done with work. So I don't want to have to really think too much when I'm reading for enjoyment. With interRel, we would love to help you guys if you guys need any assistance. This week has been an awesome week of knowledge sharing, content sharing. And just so you know, the show goes on and on. So we do free weekly webcasts. November is going to be kind of tools and best practices month. I'm really excited about December. I think we're doing demo month. So no slides. We're just going to be in the products demoing for you guys. So would love for you to join us. And then Robin and Allie are also amazing. We oftentimes do industry type conferences. So I think you'll see a couple of those, maybe one more coming out, maybe this year and throughout the next year. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tony, my co-presenter.
Thanks, Tracy. I see a number of people on the attendee list, so you're just going to have to listen to my bad jokes again. So I apologize for those. Like Tracy, I've been in the space for a long time. It's actually 20 years. Not quite as long with any one company. Congratulations on 15. I made it 13 in services, and I've been here at OneCloud for a year where I'm the Chief Customer Officer. So people have asked me repeatedly, what is a Chief Customer Officer? If you've heard the podcast I did with Opal and Anthony Manfredi, and I've described it there, but basically I've just got to make sure that our customers are successful with our product. And then, so a bit about me personally. Tracy laughed because in the last session I said, I thought about saying proud husband and dad, but what does that really say? There's lots of ways that could be taken out of context. We'll leave that one alone. I started running in my 30s after I had my daughter. Well, my wife had our daughter, but I put on the baby weight along with her, and I needed to stop doing that. So I found that running was a good way to do that. It kind of clears my brain. And if you know me, you know that I really like food, really like it, as well as good wine. And then there's a little fun fact about me and the paradox that I am, and that poor wife of mine that has to deal with all these little idiosyncrasies of mine. So if you want to look at that again and get a little chuckle out of it, those are all true facts about me. A little bit about OneCloud. OneCloud is an integration platform as a service. So we're a cloud-based technology that helps with the integration, and we're purpose-built for the business user. So it really takes a lot of the things that you're used to seeing with, say, OneCloud or with data management or FDME, and really seeks to elevate those by giving you a no-code solution with all the same power of the mapping transformations and more. So 2 products within the OneCloud platform, Integration Studio. If we think about integration as ET&L, Integration Studio is the E and the L, connectivity into systems and making that conversation happen a lot better. And then the T, or the transformation side or mapping, is data prep, which allows us to, the business users, maintain those relationships between the different systems. So when I'm exchanging data between my operational systems and my systems of record into the performance management space or out of it, OneCloud Data Prep helps with that. So that's the end of our commercial. All right, so having spent a number of years in services, and obviously Tracy's still in services, there's certain things you start to see as reoccurring themes. And so one of those is, well, every customer comes into a project with the best of intentions of, obviously you want to be successful. You wouldn't start a project with wanting to fail, right? But why do projects fail? And let's face it, they fail sometimes. And how can we think about giving ourselves the best chances for success? Well, part of that is figuring out what our implementation approach needs to be, what are the must-haves for the solution, and then key watch-outs. And so I like to think about, as we think about those three things, it really comes down to another three things: people, process, and technology. Across those three things, we have to identify the people that are going to be responsible for making this project or program successful. So that's who are our sponsor. If you haven't identified a sponsor for your project, guess what, folks? You're already set up for failure. Who are the key stakeholders, right? Who are the people that are going to get behind this? And these don't have to be at the top, but they have to be stakeholders, people that are invested in making sure that this project is successful. What's my project team? Right? Are you only going to dedicate a half a person to a project and expect it to be successful? Again, sorry, it's probably not going to be successful. And then we'll talk about this a little bit as we transition to change management, but our customers are actually part of our projects, because every project has some element of change management. So that's the process side of it. Well, as we transition into that, what's the project approach that we're going to take, getting a little bit more tactical? What's the testing approach we're going to take? And what's the education? All of these things become really paramount on the process side. Technology is the last piece. Sure, it's important. What's the solution we overall want to do? How are we going to do the project management of this? How are we going to communicate and collaborate? The technology is all important here, but people and process are really the things that drive project success, in my opinion. I think we got a little bit of a delay. Whoa.
Yep, a delay, and then it just kept on going.
So for me, when I was in services, and Tracy, feel free to chime in here, but I like to start at the end. What is it that we're trying to do here? What do we need this project to do? Is this project transformational? It doesn't have to be, or is it tactical? But it's important to understand, what are we trying to achieve with this project? Do we need to transform our whole business, or do we just need to address a pain point? Both are okay. Not every project has to be transformational. I'll keep saying that. Keep that in the back of your mind. But does the business, or do your customers even want this project? That's going to be a key element of success. If nobody wants it and it's just being forced on them, you might be successful, but limited. And then, okay, what defines project success? Because that's a subjective word. Was I on time and on budget? Are those my measures of success? Possibly. But did people actually adopt it? Are they using it? Is it helping them get their job done? Is it giving us better insight into the business and helping us make better decisions? Well, if it's doing that and it was over budget, is that still a project success? One could argue it is. Kind of depends on your measures of success. And then a little bit tactically, well, what does the application actually need to do? Or what does the program need to do? What are the outputs of it? When we're thinking about something like just a closed solution, very tactical, to start with the reports. I've got a 10K and a 10Q. Well, what do I need in order to support being able to generate that report? Start at the end, work your way back, even tactically. Who's going to use the application? It's important to understand that. And at the end of the day, who's going to be the consumer of this? Am I building something that I need to be able to put in front of the C-suite? Or is this just something that the analysts are going to use? Because how you approach that project is going to vary across those things. And then how frequently is it used? Again, if we understand the end state, then we can work back a more successful plan to be successful. Wow, that was really duplicative. We can create a better plan to be successful.
So to start, let's talk about project approach. And so hopefully you guys have a project methodology that you have used in the past. This is interRel's engagement methodology that I'm showing you guys, but what I recommend is that you have hopefully something that is somewhat similar to this. We start with an ideation process where that encompasses requirements, design, and prototyping. Prototypes are a very important part of the process, and we want to make sure we have that to kind of finalize our design. You then evolve into build, and you notice that build is not a straight arrow, it's more of a circular fashion, where you're going to build and prototype, and sometimes we'll call them build prototypes, where we'll build part of the solution, we show it to the users, we get buy-off, and then we circle again. And then we go through the validation and testing process, which is a very critical point, up into the deployment. And then under the covers, kind of supporting from start to end, we have the program management, which includes your project strategy, your project management, and your change management. So talking about ideation a little bit, this is one of the most important aspects of your Hyperion project, your EPM project, or analytics, is really taking time to understand the client's customer requirements, administrative requirements, looking at all of the different data sources. You want to educate yourself on the latest technology and the roadmaps, and making sure that you're making decisions, on where Oracle is going, brainstorming design alternatives, and then again, I mentioned prototypes. Prototypes and POCs, it is super hard for you guys to sign off on a design in a Word document or a Google document. You need to have something kind of live and tangible to help you understand and solidify things like dimensionality and features and functions that you're going to use. Are you going to use pre-built content? Do we need to create something custom? If we're creating something custom, is that an easy something, or is it more complex? So that's what prototypes help nail down, and what is one of the main things within ideation. Ideation also then creates all of the detailed implementation plans, because oftentimes it's very difficult to know until you get in and you're really playing with the technology to understand what build is going to be like and how long that's going to take. So we have things, and we'll document everything. You do have a design document, a requirements traceability matrix, but ultimately you're setting yourself up for success by making sure you understand all of the elements, and you have users buy in because they've seen prototypes, they've had input into those prototypes and into the design. This is just one example of an ideation that we like to do, is you're weighing pros and cons. So there's not one right answer for all of you, and your organization may be different than another person. So kind of considering, here, if we're comparing SBase, should I do SBase 19C, or should I, should we do freeform applications? This is a common slide that we are reviewing with our customers, and the answer is different for different customers. So we want to make sure as you go through the ideation process, you're weighing pros and cons to come up with the right solution for you.
So Tracy,
yes,
there is a good question here. Is this ideation phase, how much time should you spend on this?
Okay, so that's a great question. It depends. Standard consulting answer. So it depends. If you are looking at a very specific planning process, planning and forecasting, and you're just looking at that one particular element, your ideation could be anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, and it kind of just depends on the scope of what you're doing. And kind of the scale of it. What we're seeing for some of our customers, we have a lot of customers, Twitter presented earlier today. They were looking at financial close and consolidations. They're looking at EDM. They're looking at planning and forecasting, reporting cubes. They're looking at a much larger scale EPM implementation. We're going through redesign. We're not going to be just lifting and shifting. That ideation process was between 2 and 3 months. So again, taking time, and it's an investment, and I hear you guys, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to spend 2 months and then I don't even have anything built at that point. But it's important to make sure that when you're doing a very enterprise-wide, large-scale implementation, you want to make sure that you have time to meet with the users. You have time to create these prototypes, because it's going to help accelerate the build. And oftentimes, what happens is those prototypes that we've created, you get into build and you're part of the way there. Sometimes you're almost all of the way there. Sometimes, maybe we got to the end of an ideation prototype and we were like, no, this is what we want to do, and then we can start building. But it really does evolve into this build phase. So I would say it depends. If you're looking at a very specific process, if you're, let's say, profitability and cost management, and you're really just looking at kind of allocations process, modeling that out, well, it depends on how many models you're talking about, right? So, but you want to make sure that you kind of have dedicated time to really review, understand, meet with users, and then go through that process. So hopefully that makes sense. So again, it depends. It can be short, but again, if you're looking at a larger enterprise-wide transformation, you know, those take a little bit longer, but it pays off in the end, and it really accelerates the build process, and you eliminate a lot of, you know, rebuild activities, rework activities, because you've answered questions, you've made decisions, so you're really off and running once you get to that build phase.
And I would agree with.
Yeah.
I would agree with just about everything Tracy said there. I think the only time it stretches longer than that is when you're going through a true finance transformation process, right? Like a full-blown, we're doing the entire office of the CFO. That can take, you know, over a year. Those are generally very big programs. When we're talking about it in the EPM space, though, I'm completely in alignment with what Tracy had to say.
So from a build perspective, the main thing is iterative build reviews. So you do not want to, you know, you've done this great prototyping exercise and lots of reviews and discussion during design phase, and then stop, and then you don't see your key stakeholders till UAT. That should not happen. So you definitely have build reviews throughout, componentized reviews, so that people can sign off on different elements and you can continue to add to it. They should, your stakeholders, your design boards should be involved throughout, you know, so that when you get to UAT, you're really just kind of testing the business processes and kind of fine-tuning the applications. And then you have your validation and test and deploy as well. Make sure, I think we've got this later in our key watchouts, that you've got good amount of time, dedicated team for that validation and testing. So we'll talk about it in a little bit. From a governance perspective, just related to project approach, there's going to be a series of teams that are involved in this project. So you have your core project team. And what I recommend is, you know, at least 75% of whoever's going to be kind of the administrators, the power users that can work side by side with your consultants to build the solution. So those core project team members that are working on a day-to-day basis, we recommend whoever kind of that's going to be that admin support is the person that does that. And they're elite, we try and shoot for 75%. You're going to have subject matter specialist experts on various different areas. So we've got, you know, it may be your folks who are developing your long-range plans, your strategic models. It could be, you know, a specific group of accountants, finance. It could be operational users, business unit users that are involved in, anywhere from 25 to 50%, depending on where we need their expertise to help us design the application, review the applications, test the applications. We also have what we call design review boards. So this is going to include, you know, kind of your key stakeholders, all the way from kind of a management type level all the way down to representative users that are going to participate that. And then you have your steering committee that's helping to address that, and that steering committee contains your sponsor so that you can get you know, key decisions. You can help get excitement kind of going, you know, direction from management, so that you've got their support through the project. And different governance activities are going to be taking out throughout the project. The other piece of the project, change management. So this is super important. And again, I have seen a number of solutions that technically were great solutions, but kind of this change effort didn't happen during the course of the project, and users didn't really like it or adopt it just because they weren't involved in the change process. They maybe didn't have the best training, and so it actually ended up being, you know, a failure. So a perfect example is New Coke. You know, there may be some millennials on the call that have no idea what we're talking about. But I remember, you know, when New Coke was introduced, and I was one of those people that like hated New Coke, right? So Coca-Cola came out with this new product. They marketed it was going to be awesome, and it was a complete failure because nobody liked it. So you don't want your EPM project to be in that same boat, right? So you're going to develop the solution. You're going to have folks along the way, and there's a series of change activities that you can do to make sure you've got good user adoption, good user buy-in for the solution. It's also important to note that change management is a little bit different than project management, and you need both of these to kind of help prepare and guide your users through the project. So change management is really kind of understanding the human aspect of it, and if we're introducing this new technology, we're going from on-prem into cloud. You know, we've got users who love SmartView, and they have a ton of reports built in SmartView, but we have this new narrative reporting. How can we educate them? How can we get them on board with the new technology that would make their life easier if they can take a few moments to really understand it? So kind of understanding the human cultural effects of like what this new technology, what this new process is going to bring us. I've said it a bunch of times, but user engagement throughout, and having their feedback. I remember I learned this lesson early on, one of my very first implementations with Essbase. And I had a user, one of the kind of key lead users of one of the departments, was very outspoken and very negative and not excited about the project, and then would be very vocal in large user group meetings where we were kind of presenting different options. And I realized we needed to spend time with him. And so that's what we did. And we spent time with him one-on-one and helped educate him. And so it's kind of understanding. And then he became our biggest champion, which you know, kind of shifted the mood, shifted the kind of the perspective and the outlook on the project, and it really was a game changer. So you know, kind of supporting folks and helping them to understand, and it's just really going to help with the overall adoption. Project management is equally important. So I would say this EPM technology is awesome, and it can do so many things. And what happens on projects is, and we talk about this in just a bit, is there's once we show some features, once we show possibilities, the scope can begin to creep, because users will say, well, I want to do this, and now I want to do this, and I want to do this, which is great. And the answer is yes, we can do all of that, but how can we phase that out? What's the best, you know, implementation, you know, process to make that happen, the stages? And that's where project management is very important, because again, this is a really exciting technology and you can do a lot of stuff, but you don't want to try and do everything at once. You want to get live, get successful with an element, with a component, and then start to add on an enhancement. So it's a matter of using project management to help kind of manage all the requests and all the excitement that can come with this new technology. So again, change management, it has a direct correlation with project success. So again, making sure that you don't miss this aspect of the project. And how much change enablement or change management do you need? It kind of depends on the project. So again, some of these projects that we've got that are larger EPM cloud projects that include close, planning, forecasting, strategic modeling, reporting, we've got a lot more focus. We've got a dedicated change resource. So you really want to make sure you think through your communication plans, your strategy, what's end user going to look like, your end user training going to look like, understanding their skills and their level of technical expertise, and how do we help support them, you know, through this implementation process. So the larger the implementation, kind of the more focus and effort that you need. The smaller implementations, again, if you're kind of doing departmental type solutions, that you may not need, it may not be as critical, but when we talk about the larger projects, it's definitely a must-have. Speaking of must-haves, so this is the part I like. So again, and I actually am a PMP. I'm a certified PMP. So I get and I understand the importance of the project management elements and the project approach. But what I really like is the technology and the solution. So the must-haves for your solution. The first thing that I want to make sure you guys are doing in your Hyperion project is that you are using the right EPM tool for the EPM job. Okay, so what's great with the new Oracle Enterprise, and it's not new, it's been out for a while, the Oracle Enterprise EPM subscription is Oracle is just saying, yes, you have all of these tools, you have these business processes, you use these as you need to. So what you want to do is make sure you're using the right tool for the job. So if you need to close and consolidate, that's where you're going to use FCC. If you have some complicated tax requirements and tax reporting requirements, historically you may have tried to do a lot of scripting or some customization in HFM to meet that. Well, when you get to EPM Cloud, you don't have to do that. There's actually a separate solution for tax reporting, and it integrates with FCC. So keep FCC focused on fast consolidations, your intercompany eliminations, all of those types of things, journals, so you can close the book, consolidate and close the books, but then leverage the tax solution to meet your tax reporting requirements. Planning and forecasting, so you're not going to be doing your plans and forecasts in FCC. You're going to be doing that in the Planning Cloud. And again, we've got these integration solutions to help us integrate and kind of tie all to the data all together within this EPM framework. Using the planning modules when it makes sense, when it meets your requirements. I think for the most part, everybody should use financials. It is a great framework, and again, you can layer in your own drivers, and you can make it your own. But it's a great framework. The other modules are really strong as well. Now, you may have a very specific industry use case, a very specific model that you want, and absolutely that's supported in Planning Cloud as well. Now, you want to keep planning focused on planning and just the data that you need to support your plan and forecast. If you have a need for reporting actuals, level of detail, which can be oftentimes much greater, you want to put that into your reporting cubes. Using profitability and cost management for allocations, using strategic modeling to do that aggregate level scenario modeling, long range plans, and then using the right reporting tools that we have available to us. And then under the covers, you've got data integration. So key takeaway here and kind of your must-haves for solution is again, Oracle's got these different business processes that are part of the one EPM Cloud. You want to make sure you can take advantage of the strengths of each one of those. Another must-have for your solution is we want to simplify for the user. And what's great about the Oracle EPM Cloud is it gives us features and functions to do that. So we can leverage the enabling technology to really guide users and processes and really make it simple. So, I mean, we all have our phone, and I'm pretty sure none of us went to, although I might need it, a one-day class on how to access the apps on my phone and how to use the calendar app or how to use the mail app. I was able to just figure that out. So our goal is, and we may not get there 100%, but the goal is to try and have the cloud be the same way and really just kind of guide and navigate users and make it super simple for them. So we can use things like Task Manager, which was formerly known as Financial Close Manager. They moved it to the cloud, but to create, our different processes, the different steps with links to different places within the EPM Cloud to manage a specific process. So it could be our close process, it could be our budgeting and forecasting process. With the cloud, we get these cards and clusters. Oracle gives us some out of the box, but you can customize those and create your own navigation paths for users. It can vary based on role and provisioning. And again, to kind of create these cards and clusters, I mean, no IT needed, and it's very similar to kind of how you can like group apps on your phone. So it's kind of a simple UI, and you kind of pick and choose how you want things to show up. I think the most challenging part about the cards and clusters process is figuring out which icon do I want to use that can help, convey what I want this task to look like. We can use security and provisioning, so I only see the things that I have access to. And these are examples, right? Run on save opportunities, so we don't want to have users enter in a particular forecast, and then they have to click a business rule to run, and then they've got to, click an integration which shares data here. We now have the ability to create really kind of seamless integrations, calculations for users. So they click save once, and then there's some magic that happens behind the scenes to calculate their forecast, aggregate their forecast, sync their forecast with another cube, and they don't even have to know or care what's going on behind the scenes. Ultimately, having a central repository. So again, a lot of folks that are still doing stuff in Excel, it still happens, and you've got multiple spreadsheets and things all over the place. We want to bring things together in a central repository so everybody knows where to go and they know how to navigate. The other thing is you're developing these user interfaces is don't just move over the old process. Really take time to, if you're moving in the cloud, there's so many features and functions you want to take advantage of. So don't just move them over. You want to learn about the new technology, learn about the new features, and learn what you didn't even know was possible that you could do in the EPM cloud. You want to reduce and eliminate manual steps. So combining data from multiple sources to create reports in Excel, that 100% should go away. You want to try and combine data sources and reporting cubes where you need to, and or you can use narrative reporting to create report books and packages that can create and pull content from basically any source. You want to, as much as you can, remove any manual validation steps, and these are just examples, master data changes. So with EDM, we can create system validations, both custom validations, business user specific, so that, you know, we don't have to worry about somebody making sure it was a 4-digit code and that it's prefixed with an E. Those are things that are just built in the system. We don't have to worry about users doing anymore. Removing manual data reconciliations, automating where we can, and building in alerts and notifications. You know, from a planning perspective, I still see this oftentimes where folks are calculating drivers offline, or they've got this Excel model that they're kind of calculating some logic and then they're linking to, and then they submit into the solution. Those are the things you want to try and pull into the system and calculate in the system where you can. What you also want to do is give users flexibility. So having guardrails where they can choose, what drivers do I want to use for my calculations? What trend options do I want to do? So there's ways within the UI where users can kind of pick how they want to calculate a particular plan, forecast, or calculation. We can give them options, but it's picking from a validated calculation we know is going to reconcile. It's a standard set of logic. Everybody's using the same formula. And so these are some of the things you want to do, again, to reduce and or eliminate where we can any manual steps that are taking place outside of the system. I mentioned this before, so this is just not even a comprehensive list, but a pretty long list that you can see of all of the really cool new things that are in the Oracle EPM Cloud. So when you are moving from on-premise into the cloud, EPM Cloud, this is why you really want to stop. And you don't, I mean, you can just lift and shift, but my recommendation is if you have the time to be able to evaluate, you can redesign your processes to really improve them and take them to the next level. You want your solutions to be transparent. So no black boxes. You want users, administrators, everybody to understand the system. And so that's where EPM Cloud provides a number of different ways to do that, whether it's PCM, they have pre-built rules, balancing report where you can drill in by rule set and understand the ins and outs of the allocations. I've got hyperlinks where I can click on a hyperlink, it pulls up a smart view of that query, and then I can drill in from there, right? So no black boxes, we want full transparency. If we've got member formulas that we're using in our planning applications or reporting applications or FCC, we want users to see what is the formula. They can see that within their data forms. And then again, having transparency into the data transformations, understanding how data is mapped. EDM, again, as part of your use set, you can create view-only users. So if folks need to be able to understand how things are mapped or how things are rolling up, again, they're going to be able to see it in their individual EPM processes, but you could also give view access where you need it to view users in EDM to understand hierarchies, attributes, and mappings. Workflow and collaboration is another must-have. So whether it's EDM and we've got data governance and we have kind of our central, person who's in charge of creating new accounts, new cost centers that create that, and then, our planning, our FCC applications need to receive those. They've got updates and properties based on that. Having a collaborative process where one person can make a change, it goes through, it's reviewed, it's approved, lands in various different target systems, those are approved, and then it gets synced to the applications. So having a governance process that just comes with EDM. So again, in DRM in the on-prem world, we had to use REST API. to create some of that, there was an additional cost. Now that is just one of the features that's available in EPM. We talked a little bit about Task Manager. So creating your connected closed checklists with workflow and approvals and assignments, and you can see where everything's at. Part of the features that come with FCC. And then again, if you wanted to turn on and use approvals and workflow and planning, you could see kind of the promotion path. We used approvals, so way back before my 15 years at interRel, I worked at the University of MD Anderson Cancer Center, and we used approvals because it really it facilitated communications between departments and division administrators, so that if division administrators wanted to make a change, they didn't change it. They actually had to push budgets forecast back down to the departments. Departments made it, so it really kept folks in line. So Oracle EPM Cloud, definitely don't miss out on this kind of workflow collaboration features that you have across the business processes. Again, you may not have used them and on-premise, but it might be one of those must-haves that you want to build into the solution, where some of this was maybe taking place offline and emails or conversations. Now we've got central repositories where things are documented, can be audited. If you have questions, you can go back and see, kind of how the flow took place. Delay.
So you may have noticed me smiling a few times throughout the presentation. Tracy and I actually, I used to work for another consulting company that competed against interRel, but the themes are the same across all these things. So it's being able to take a step back and see that it's validating, and hopefully you guys as attendees can understand and appreciate also that we are trying to share with you things that we do see as how do you guarantee project success and how do you avoid some of the pitfalls. So another thing when we think about what's important here is the whole integration and automation cycle. You saw her talk a bit about it earlier. Get rid of those manual processes. Well, that applies to data as well. The whole underlying foundation of this, it doesn't matter how pretty your reports are, how slick they are, how fast your calculations run. If they produce the wrong result, that's not good. But if they produce the wrong result because they've got bad data, you can see data is the foundation here. So in order to get the rest of your house working and stood up and comfortable, you've got to make sure that your foundation is built. And so integration is the key portion of that. Don't give this short shrift. Think about your integration strategy early in the program or the project. Don't just think it's going to happen. You've got to take a proactive approach here. And so as part of that, what's the plumbing I need to build? I mean, this is one of the reasons it's often thought of later on. It is plumbing. Right? We're connecting and moving data between systems. It's not interesting. Nobody cares about it. It's just like plumbing. Nobody cares about it till it breaks. So, get your pipes, know where your pipes need to go so that you don't have to tear open the walls and fix something. If you outline it, you could have it nice and clean from the get-go. And that allows you to automate more. Right? If you've got good data and you've got good integration processes defined, then you can automate those processes. And, I put it out there, think outside the box. It's the idea that just because you've always done it this way, or you've got a particular technology in the organization, you'll see this, a place might be a Del Boomi shop, they might be an Informatica shop, and there's this battle that may occur between the business and IT. Challenge them, get them to think outside the box about how integration is different here, why it needs to be different, why I need to be able to respond to the business events that are occurring, and I need to be able to respond rapidly. So key watchouts. These are the things that can sink projects. You heard Tracy talk about it earlier. Scope creep. Everybody gets excited. Sometimes people just don't understand what scope is, and they get upset when you tell them, it's a great idea, but maybe we park it till a little bit later. You've got to manage that from a change management perspective as well. But scope is the biggest killer of projects. And it's usually death by paper cuts. It's not the idea of, oh, well, we're just going to completely change everything we do. It's, well, we're going to add this one feature in, and then this next feature, and this next feature. And then you go back and you look and you go, why is the project 3 months over budget? or, past deadline. Well, it's because we did these 800 different things that we didn't initially plan for. Really monitor scope. And so how do you do that? How do you get rid of that scope creep, or at least reduce it down to a manageable number? It's that ideation phase that Tracy talked about earlier, and the design phase, really understanding what are you trying to accomplish. It's more fun to put hands to keyboard. Trust me, as a practitioner, I love putting hands to keyboard, but if I don't know exactly what I'm trying to get to as my end goal, you heard me talk about it at the beginning here. If I don't understand what my output is, what am I trying to deliver, then I'm probably going to have a whole heck of a lot of scope creep. We've got to manage our expectations of project stakeholders. And that goes up and down the spectrum, from our customers to the project team members to our key stakeholders, all the way up to the sponsor. Sometimes it's difficult to have a conversation with the sponsor and tell them, no, I'm sorry, that's not in scope right now. And here's why. And we either make a choice, because there's 3 levers that can be pulled in any project: time, budget, and scope, right? So maybe it is a scope thing here. So if that business deems that to be critical, well, then you've got to pull another lever in order to make that work. That's it. Another thing that I saw all the time, and Tracy, I'd love your input on this one, but how often have you seen testing just be an afterthought?
Yeah, well, we try to not let that happen, because when it's not tested and not validated, for sure we are failing. Because and a couple of times we've said, well, we're going to have to go live test, and that doesn't work well either. So definitely keep this, keep time dedicated, keep this focused, and make this a priority.
100%. And I bring up testing here because people go, oh, we tested. Well, what kind of testing did you do? You can see I outlined just 5 different tests there that are common in the EPM space. There's more. Oh, there's definitely more. But these are the common ones. Did you do all of them? Did you do one of them? If we think about integration testing, conference room pilots, user acceptance, the confluence of those things, they can all overlap. In the middle there's that parallel, or sometimes called go live testing. Really think about your testing strategy. Don't just assume that what somebody developed is all good and ready to go, because it's probably not. It doesn't test all the edge cases. So be aware of that. Data validation. I've heard this one repeatedly. This is my favorite thing to drill into people. It is the longest running task in any single project. Anybody that thinks otherwise, anybody that tells you otherwise, is either not educated about the subject, delusional, or lying to you. And I'm saying that obviously a bit tongue in cheek, but it's an always underestimated project, or part of the project, right? And that is in terms of the time necessary to complete it and the effort to actually remediate the data validation problems that we find. Now, I've heard this one more than a few times from customers. Our data is clean. We're just going to load it in. It's going to be fine. Sure it is. It's not. There's always remediation. There's always something that somebody forgot about, that, oh, we did this one-off thing in that month, and now you spend a bunch of time tracing it down. And another big problem here is we're going to load 10 years of history into the system. Well, one, how often do you actually go back and report 10 years? Oh, well, we do it once every 2 years, so we definitely need it. Well, okay, maybe over time you layer in that 10 years of history, but is it necessary for your project go live? Really evaluate that, because it's going to take you a lot of time to validate a lot of data. And then my overall favorite of all of the data validation mistakes people make is saying, we're just going to hire temps or interns or even consultants to do this reconciliation. Nobody knows your data better than you do, folks. Trying to get somebody that is unfamiliar with your data to do the validation, all they're really going to do is come in and identify a variance. Maybe that's value add. You can use systems to do that. It's really drilling in and understanding why it's wrong. Is it a calculation problem? Is it a problem with our actual data? Is it a mapping problem? There's a lot of things that can drive data to not validate. And having somebody that's unfamiliar with your data do the validation is wholly inefficient.
I don't know why it's not moving. Oh, okay. I gotta be patient. And from a time check, Tony, we're getting close on time. I'm sorry. I think I talked a little too long. So
I know. Tracy and I just presented together. We're both verbose. We just snuck in under. I think this one's going to run a couple minutes late, but hopefully everybody's thinking, hey, this is a good session, and we'll hang out and hear a couple more things here. End user training. At the end of the day, it goes back to the change management idea. If we don't have system advocates, then we have detractors. Education gets rid of those detractors. You heard Tracy talk about that person that sounded a little crotchety. Well, as soon as they sat down with him and gave him knowledge, then he became an advocate as opposed to a detractor. End user training is critical for this. Don't give this short shrift. And then documentation, which I think that slide is going to come up and just, yep, documentation here. Again, this is another one that I saw this a lot even in the sales cycle when a consulting firm's talking to a customer. Well, one of the things that you'll sometimes hear is, well, we as the customer will take on the documentation. We'll do that because we want to save some money. Okay, well, my experience tells me that one, most people don't like doing documentation because it's tedious, time consuming, and it's rapidly out of date. But it's a critical portion of the long-term sustainability of the solution. So don't ignore it. Don't make it something that's an optional. Treat it as core to the project. And you can see there's a whole bunch of documentation types there that you should be thinking about. Next slide, Tracy. There we go. So finally, kind of closing here, make sure that the people involved in the project from the customer side, whether you're a customer or if you're a consultant and you have customers, make sure they're engaged with the project. And we all know that the most successful projects are the ones where we've got key stakeholders and we've got people engaged in the project so that they can help direct us and also help make sure that they can own this system after we hand it over to them and make it a live production system. So with that, I think that was kind of the closing, was it not?
Yes, I think we're, summary, just, project implementation, solution must-haves, and he talked about, kind of the key watch-outs, rollout and support, and really focusing around people, process, and technology. So I think with that, we're going to go ahead and conclude because I think